When multimillionaire Jeffrey Epstein died by suicide while awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges last year, the outrage, the disappointment was palpable. With Epstein gone, would we ever know the full extent of who else may have been involved in his alleged labyrinth of sexual abuse? Enter the recent arrest of Ghislaine Maxwell, the one-time girlfriend and alleged accomplice of Epstein. She's been charged by federal prosecutors in New York for her alleged role in conspiring with Epstein to recruit, groom, and sexually abuse underage girls as young as 14. She's previously denied any wrongdoing. Now people are clamoring to know if Maxwell will name any of Epstein's cohorts. But she is the big fry in this case, given the mountain of heinous allegations leveled against her. Would the feds actually be willing to cut a deal in exchange for her little black book? Joining me now is Ellie Honig, CNN legal analyst and former assistant U.S. attorney for the district bringing charges against Maxwell, the Southern District of New York. Okay, Ellie, I know that the public is interested. I know that the media is interested. Do you think the Southern District is all that interested in her little black book?
They really should be, Michael. There was this thing we used to say to juries back when I was at the Southern District of New York, which is it would be really nice if we could make big criminal cases solely by relying on testimony from school teachers and nurses and good people. But the reality is good people like that can't take you inside a criminal organization. Only another criminal can. And the cold, hard reality is people like to think that prosecutors do everything based off CSI stuff and lab magic. The reality is cooperating witnesses are the lifeblood, especially of federal prosecutors. Sometimes you have to flip a really bad person in order to catch even more bad people.
If you, Ellie Honig, were leading this prosecution, would you allow her to name a name, hypothetically, of course, that she has a name to be named, or would you demand she give you everything?
Everything. That's the deal in the Southern District. There's no halfway cooperation. It is all or nothing. When you cooperate, you have to admit everything you did, you have to plead guilty to it, and you have to be willing to testify against others. I would take that little black book, first time I met with her in a conference room, and I would go through it entry by entry, A to Z, each person. Who is this person? How do you know them? Were they at all involved? And do you have any other documents or evidence backing it up? You go through it start to finish.
What level of leniency would she be provided, hypothetically speaking, if she just pled guilty now?
Yeah, if she just pled guilty without a cooperation agreement, she'd get very little leniency. If I was back at the SDNY, I'd be willing to give her basically nothing if she didn't cooperate.
Wow.
If she does cooperate, though, the reality is if you do cooperate, that's where you fare the best. And honestly, cooperators get really good deals. I cooperated people who had committed multiple murders and ended up doing 3, 4, 5 years. Look, it doesn't feel great, but sometimes you have to just do, as a prosecutor, you just have to do the cold, hard, utilitarian math and say, this person's bad, they pled guilty, but they gave us all these other really bad, really culpable people.
I guess the part that I'm struggling with is that she faces 35 years for having been the procurer. That's the allegation here. And I'm not sweeping it under the rug. I'm not excusing it. But if there were someone who was on that plane, whatever the hell they called it, the Flying Lolita or whatever, you know, 1 or 2 times, are you really going to cut the sentence that she'd be facing so as to get that one individual, whomever that may be?
Well, it would be more than one individual. I mean, she would have to deliver quite a bit. I think you always have to sort of do that math. If all she does is deliver one person or someone else who helped sort of tangentially run the operation,
right,
then you're not interested. But if she can deliver everybody and a lot of different individuals, then yeah, I would be okay with somebody getting a significant break. You have to sort of balance the scales of justice here. And look, the victims have a right, I believe, to see as many people as possible brought to justice. And I think if you speak to the victims, I think they'd tell you that this was it certainly seems from the indictment like this was a very large operation, a lot of wrongdoers here. At this moment, all we have is Jeffrey Epstein, who's dead, and Ghislaine Maxwell. I want to get the whole story.
Okay, a final and important subject. Am I right that this is being handled in the Southern District of New York by the Public Corruption Unit? And if so, why would that be the case?
Yeah, it is, Michael, and that jumped off the page to me. So these cases, these sex trafficking cases, are ordinarily handled in the Southern District by the Organized Crime Unit, now called the Violent and Organized Crime Unit. I know because I was in that unit. I was chief of that unit, and I did these cases through that unit. The fact that this is being charged out of public corruption tells me there is some public official somewhere, past, present, involved in this somehow. This happened one other time in my experience. The office did this big sex trafficking case. I was sitting there thinking, why is this coming out of the public corruption unit? It turned out that was the case where Eliot Spitzer, then the governor of New York, was client 9. So I'd keep a close eye on that. I think that's a really important tell.
And by the way, he was a public figure, meaning Jeffrey Epstein, but that alone wouldn't put this in the public. We're talking about someone with portfolio, right? Elected official, someone with government stature.
Exactly. This isn't just the famous people unit. This is the public corruption unit. It has to be a public official of some type.
All right. I'm taking away from this segment that if Ellie Honig were prosecuting the case, he'd want to go after everybody, whether that's going to be the way the SD New York handles it. We'll see.
Thanks, Michael. That's how I operated back then. Yeah, I think I would try to do it again.
Remind me never to be prosecuted by you. Thank you, Ellie.
Can do. Thanks, Michael.
Let's check in on your tweets and Facebook comments. What do we have, Catherine, from the world of Twitter, I believe? How can her safety or even her life be protected? There are some mighty powerful people who would like to shut her up. Well, Janet, that's what we presume, right? You must be reading the Daily Mail as often as I am. I mean, I don't know what the facts are. What I think I know is largely predicated, I'll give them a shout out, on that Netflix documentary, which is called Filthy Rich. Holy smokes, if half the stuff in there is true, she's got a real issue.